Imagine planting something small and harmless looking, maybe even something beautiful. At first, everything seems perfect. It grows quickly, fills empty areas, covers bare soil, and even appears to solve a problem in your garden. But then, something begins to shift. It spreads faster than you expected. It starts appearing in places where you never planted it. Your vegetables begin to struggle. Flowers slowly disappear. Roots spread underground. Shade begins to dominate. And before you even notice what's happening, your garden is no longer under your control. Some plants don't simply grow, they take over. They compete aggressively, crowd out other plants, invade new areas, and dominate everything around them. And once they become established, removing them can take years of effort and persistence. 1. Trumpet vine. Trumpet vine is one of those plants that instantly captures attention. Its large, bright, trumpet-shaped flowers attract hummingbirds and pollinators, making it seem like the perfect fast-growing climber for covering fences, pergolas, or walls. But behind its beauty lies a plant that doesn't just grow, it spreads aggressively and relentlessly. Trumpet vine expands in two powerful ways at the same time. First, it produces a large number of seeds that can travel with the wind, allowing new plants to establish themselves across different parts of your garden. Second, and even more aggressively, it spreads underground through runners. These roots move quietly beneath the soil, sending up new shoots far away from the original plant. This means you might plant it in one location, and later find new growth appearing meters away in places you never intended. Above ground, the vine grows extremely quickly. It climbs by, attaching itself using aerial rootlets, gripping tightly onto fences, walls, trees, and structures. Once it finds a surface, it doesn't stop, it keeps climbing, thickening, and expanding. Over time, the vines become woody and heavy. What begins as a light decorative climber can eventually turn into a dense, tangled mass that places real strain on whatever supports it. Weak fences may bend, trellises can collapse, and even strong structures may require maintenance to withstand the weight. When trumpet vine climbs trees, it creates an additional problem. It spreads across branches, forming a thick canopy that blocks sunlight from reaching the tree's own leaves. This gradually weakens the tree and interferes with its natural growth. Cutting it back might seem like a solution, but often it has the opposite effect. Pruning stimulates even more aggressive growth, causing the plant to send out multiple new shoots and become even denser and harder to control. Meanwhile, the root system continues its activity underground, constantly producing new sprouts. Even if the main plant is removed, these roots can keep generating new growth for a long time afterward. Because of this, managing trumpet vine becomes an ongoing task. It requires repeated cutting, digging, and careful monitoring to keep it contained. Without consistent effort, it quickly spreads beyond control and begins to dominate everything nearby. What makes it especially deceptive is how attractive it appears at the beginning. Many gardeners plant it for quick coverage, only to realize later that they've introduced something that refuses to stay confined. 2. Purple loosestrife. Purple loosestrife is one of the most misleading plants you can introduce into a garden, especially if you have areas with moisture or standing water. At first glance, it looks stunning. Tall spikes of vibrant purple flowers rise above the foliage, creating a bold display that attracts pollinators and adds color to damp areas. It seems like an ideal choice for pond edges, low spots, or wet soil. But beneath that beauty lies an extremely aggressive method of growth. Purple loosestrife produces an enormous number of seeds, not just hundreds or thousands, but sometimes millions from a single mature plant. These seeds are extremely small and lightweight, allowing them to spread easily through wind, water, and even by attaching to shoes, tools, or animals. Once these seeds land in suitable conditions, particularly moist soil, they germinate quickly and begin forming new plants. Because of the sheer number of seeds produced, a small patch can quickly turn into a large, uncontrollable population. As it grows, purple loosestrife forms dense clusters of vegetation. These thick stands are so tightly packed that they crowd out other plants, leaving no space, light, or resources for anything else to survive. In natural ecosystems, this can have serious consequences. Native plants disappear, and with them, the insects and wildlife that depend on those plants. Even in a home garden, this leads to a monoculture, an area dominated by a single species with very little diversity. It thrives particularly well in wet environments near ponds, drainage areas, ditches, or any low-lying ground where water collects. In these conditions, it spreads even faster and becomes even more difficult to manage. Another challenge is its persistence. Even after removing visible plants, the soil may already be filled with seeds waiting to germinate. This means new growth can continue appearing year after year, long after the original plants have been removed. Controlling purple loosestrife requires constant monitoring, repeated removal, and preventing it from producing seeds in the first place. Once it sets seed, the cycle continues and expands. In many regions, this plant is considered invasive and is restricted or discouraged due to the ecological damage it can cause. It serves as a clear example of how a plant can appear beautiful on the surface while quietly overwhelming everything around it. 3. Wisteria. Wisteria is one of those plants that instantly draws attention. When it blooms, with long cascading clusters of purple, blue, or white flowers, it looks almost unreal, like something straight out of a painting. But beneath that beauty lies a plant with remarkable strength and persistence. Wisteria is a woody climbing vine, and unlike soft, flexible climbers, its stems become thick, heavy, and extremely powerful over time. As it grows, it doesn't simply rest against structures, it wraps around them, twisting tightly in a spiraling motion that functions almost like a tightening grip. Pergolas, fences, railings, tree trunks, and even parts of buildings can become completely covered, and as the plant matures, those vines grow thicker and heavier. Fully developed wisteria vines often feel more like solid branches than typical climbing stems. When wisteria coils around trees and shrubs, it can gradually constrict them. This process acts like a slow tightening pressure, limiting the plant's ability to move water and nutrients through its stems. Over time, this weakens the host plant, slows its growth, and can eventually lead to its decline or death. But it's not only the constricting effect that makes wisteria problematic, it's also the sheer weight it develops. A mature wisteria can become extremely heavy, especially when soaked with rain. That weight can damage weak structures, bend metal supports, break wooden pergolas, and even harm roofs or gutters if the plant is left unchecked. Another challenge is its aggressive growth rate. During the growing season, wisteria produces long, fast-growing shoots that can extend several meters in a short time. These shoots actively search for surfaces to grab nearby plants, wires, fences, and quickly spread far beyond where they were originally planted. If not consistently pruned, wisteria can take over large sections of a garden, casting dense shade over everything beneath it. This shade can become so thick that it blocks sunlight entirely, leaving smaller plants below struggling to survive. Even more difficult is its persistence. Cutting wisteria back doesn't eliminate it in many cases. It responds by growing even more vigorously. Its root system stores significant energy, allowing it to repeatedly regenerate after pruning. Keeping wisteria under control requires regular, heavy pruning, often several times a year. Without that level of maintenance, it can quickly transform from a decorative feature into a dominant force that takes over the space rather than enhancing it. 4. Bindweed. Bindweed is one of the most deceptive and frustrating plants a gardener can face. At first glance, it doesn't appear threatening at all. It has soft, trailing vines and small, delicate flowers that resemble miniature morning glories. But once it establishes itself in your garden, it rarely leaves without a struggle. What makes bindweed so destructive is its two-layered approach. It spreads aggressively both above the soil and deep below it at the same time. Above ground, bindweed vines grow quickly and begin wrapping around anything they encounter. Unlike some climbing plants that loosely attach, bindweed coils tightly, spiraling around stems, leaves, and even entire plants. This wrapping action isn't just untidy, it actively strangles. As the vine tightens, it restricts the host plant's growth, blocks sunlight, and pulls stems into unnatural positions. Vegetables like tomatoes, beans, and peppers can quickly become tangled, bent, and weakened. Flowers get smothered, and entire plants may collapse under the pressure. But the real challenge lies underground. Bindweed develops an extremely deep and extensive root system. Its roots can reach several meters down into the soil, spreading outward in all directions. These roots act as a storage network, holding energy that allows the plant to survive difficult conditions and regrow repeatedly. Even if you remove the visible plant, the roots remain. And here's the most frustrating part. Even the smallest fragment of root left behind can grow into a completely new plant. This means that simply digging it out rarely solves the problem. In fact, disturbing the soil can sometimes make things worse, as broken root pieces can spread and create even more bindweed plants in new areas. Bindweed is also incredibly persistent. It can tolerate drought, poor soil conditions, and repeated cutting. No matter how often it's removed, it continues to return season after season, gradually expanding its presence. Once it becomes established, it often turns into a long-term issue that requires constant attention, repeated removal, and patience over several years. It's not just a simple weed, it's an ongoing battle that quietly drains time, energy, and resources from your garden. 5. Bamboo. Bamboo is often advertised as one of the fastest growing plants on the planet, and that's exactly what makes it risky in a home garden. What many people don't realize is that bamboo varieties behave very differently. The most problematic types are known as running bamboo, and they spread through an aggressive underground network of rhizomes that act like hidden pathways beneath the soil. These rhizomes can travel several meters in a single growing season, moving silently under lawns, garden beds, pathways, and even hard surfaces. You might plant bamboo in one corner of your yard, and months later, new shoots begin appearing in completely unexpected places, sometimes even beyond fences or in a neighbor's garden. What makes this situation even more challenging is how quickly bamboo grows once those shoots appear. During peak growing periods, it can grow several centimeters or more each day. A small shoot can rapidly develop into a tall, woody cane within just a few weeks, creating dense shade and competing aggressively with nearby plants. As bamboo thickens, it forms dense clusters that block sunlight almost entirely. Beneath this canopy, the soil becomes dry and nutrient depleted because the root system aggressively absorbs water and nutrients. Nearby vegetables, flowers, and shrubs begin to weaken, grow more slowly, and eventually die due to lack of resources. Another hidden issue is the potential for structural damage. Bamboo rhizomes are strong enough to exploit weak points in hard surfaces. They can push through cracks in paving, damage garden edging, and even interfere with foundations, drainage systems, or underground pipes over time. Removing bamboo is where many gardeners encounter serious difficulty. Cutting down the visible canes does little to solve the problem. In fact, it often triggers the plant to produce even more shoots, causing it to return thicker and stronger. The real issue, the underground rhizome system, can survive for years, storing energy and continuously regenerating. Complete removal usually requires digging deep into the soil and carefully removing every section of rhizome, often repeating the process multiple times. Even a small fragment left behind can restart the entire cycle of growth. Because of this, experienced gardeners approach bamboo with caution. If they choose to grow it, they typically install strong root barriers deep in the ground to physically limit its spread, Without those precautions, bamboo can quickly go from being an attractive ornamental plant to a long-term high-maintenance problem that takes over the entire garden. 6. English ivy. English ivy is often associated with classic beauty, covering stone walls, climbing old buildings, and creating a timeless, lush green appearance. But behind that charm lies a plant capable of quietly taking over and damaging everything around it. What makes English ivy particularly problematic is its dual growth habit. It spreads along the ground while also climbing upward, allowing it to dominate multiple layers of a garden at once. At ground level, ivy forms dense, carpet-like mats that expand continuously. These mats block sunlight from reaching the soil, preventing seeds from germinating and suffocating smaller plants. Over time, large sections of a garden can become monocultures where ivy is the only plant left. Above ground, ivy uses aerial rootlets to cling tightly to surfaces. It climbs trees, fences, walls, and structures with surprising strength. Once it starts climbing a tree, it continues upward, wrapping around branches and spreading across the canopy. This creates several serious issues. First, the dense foliage blocks sunlight from reaching the tree's own leaves, reducing its ability to photosynthesize. Second, the added weight, especially when wet or covered with snow, puts stress on branches, increasing the risk of breakage. Over time, heavily covered trees become weaker and more vulnerable to pests, disease, and storm damage. In severe cases, the tree may die or collapse entirely. Ivy can also cause damage to buildings and structures. Its rootlets can penetrate small cracks in walls, siding, or mortar. As the plant grows, these entry points can widen, leading to moisture retention, structural damage, and costly repairs. Another reason ivy is so difficult to control is its resilience. Its root system is extensive and deeply anchored. Simply pulling it away from surfaces rarely removes it completely. Any roots left behind, even small fragments, can regrow and restart the cycle. In addition, ivy produces berries that are spread by birds, allowing it to establish itself in new areas far from where it was originally planted. This turns it into not just a localized issue, but one that can spread widely. Once established, controlling English ivy requires consistent effort, cutting, digging, and monitoring over long periods of time. It's not something that can be solved quickly. What makes ivy especially deceptive is how slowly it spreads at first. It may seem manageable for months or even years, until it reaches a tipping point and suddenly begins to dominate everything around it. By the time that happens, removing it becomes far more difficult, and the damage to your garden may already be significant. 7. Japanese knotweed. Japanese knotweed is often regarded as one of the most aggressive and destructive plants in the world, and that reputation is well deserved. Once it becomes established, it doesn't just compete with other plants, it completely takes over and replaces them. At first glance, it may resemble a tall, bamboo-like plant with broad leaves and rapid growth. But the real danger lies beneath the surface. Knotweed spreads through an extensive network of rhizomes, thick, woody underground stems that can stretch several meters in every direction. These rhizomes store large reserves of energy, allowing the plant to grow quickly and recover from damage with remarkable ease. Above ground, knotweed forms dense, impenetrable thickets. Its tall stems and large leaves create deep shade that blocks sunlight almost entirely. Beneath this canopy, very few plants can survive. Over time, entire areas become completely dominated by knotweed alone. However, the most serious problem is its ability to cause structural damage. Its rhizomes are extremely strong and persistent. They can force their way through cracks in concrete, spread beneath foundations, damage paving, and interfere with drainage systems. Even small weaknesses in hard surfaces can be exploited as the plant expands. This makes knotweed more than just a gardening issue, it becomes a property concern. In some cases, its presence can reduce property value or require costly professional removal. Attempting to remove it manually is extremely difficult. Cutting the plant only removes what is visible above ground, while the underground system remains fully active. In many cases, cutting actually stimulates new growth, causing the plant to return even more aggressively. Digging it out requires removing every piece of rhizome, which often means excavating deeply and repeating the process multiple times. Even a tiny fragment left behind can regrow into a completely new plant. Because of its destructive nature, Japanese knotweed is regulated or restricted in many regions. In some areas, planting it or allowing it to spread is illegal due to the damage it can cause to both ecosystems and infrastructure. Once it appears, it cannot be ignored. It requires constant attention, persistence, and often long-term control strategies to prevent it from taking over completely. 8. Creeping Jenny. Creeping Jenny is one of those plants that can easily mislead even experienced gardeners. At first, it seems like the ideal solution, a low-growing, fast-spreading ground cover with bright green or golden leaves that form a soft, carpet-like layer. It fills empty spaces quickly and gives the garden a lush, finished appearance. But that rapid growth is exactly where the problem begins. Creeping Jenny spreads by sending out long, trailing stems that root wherever they come into contact with the soil. Each point where the stem touches the ground can develop into a new plant, which then continues spreading further. This creates a chain reaction, allowing it to cover large areas in a surprisingly short time. As it expands, it forms thick, dense mats across the soil surface. While these mats may look attractive from above, they create difficult conditions underneath. Sunlight is blocked, airflow is reduced, and smaller plants become smothered. Young seedlings and low-growing flowers are the most vulnerable. They simply cannot push through the dense layer of creeping jenny, and over time, they disappear entirely. Even more established plants can become weakened as the ground cover spreads around their base, competing for water and nutrients. In moist or nutrient-rich soil, creeping jenny becomes even more aggressive. It grows faster, spreads wider, and anchors itself more firmly. Areas near irrigation systems, ponds, or low-lying parts of the garden are especially at risk of being quickly overtaken. Another difficulty is how easily it regenerates. Like many creeping plants, even small pieces left behind after trimming or removal can take root again and form new growth. This makes complete removal challenging unless it is done very thoroughly. It also tends to spread beyond its intended boundaries. It can creep into lawns, move into garden beds, and extend along pathways and edges, gradually disrupting the structure and design of your garden. To keep creeping jenny under control, regular trimming and clear physical boundaries are essential. Without ongoing maintenance, it can quickly shift from a decorative ground cover into a dominant plant that overwhelms everything around it. What begins as a soft, attractive green carpet can slowly turn into a dense layer that your garden struggles to break free from.